For a look at what Americans are thinking about all those headlines that are dominating our conversations here on Face the Nation, we turn to Anthony Salvanto, our CBS News Elections and Surveys Director. Anthony's got two polls for us today. And first, we'll take a look at the national poll on the impeachment inquiry. So, Anthony, over the past 2 weeks, since this has really picked up steam, have you seen a change?
Not over the last 2 weeks. We do see hardening partisan divisions here. We see Republicans increasingly saying that they support the president, don't think he ought to cooperate with Congress. Democrats even more strongly approving of the inquiry. Really important when you watch the polls on this is that you differentiate between support for having an inquiry, which there is marginal majority support, get the facts, learn what happened, and whether or not they think the president deserves impeachment. And that is much more mixed nationally. What I think is interesting going forward here, Margaret, is that when you talk to the people who say they don't know which way to go on this, they say they aren't paying as much attention, and they feel like a lot of this, a lot of names, a lot of places are hard to follow. So it may be a challenge for both parties to move beyond their base as they make their arguments when Congress returns.
So overstating things to say building support for impeachment, it's more complicated than that.
It's more complicated than that.
Our second survey is of Democrats in the 18 states holding the first primary or caucus contest next year. According to our CBS News Battleground Tracker, Senator Elizabeth Warren has extended her lead with 31% support among Democrats. Former Vice President Joe Biden is second with 25% support, and Senator Bernie Sanders rounds out the top tier with 17%. Our next group of candidates shows Senator Kamala Harris with 7% support. South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg has 5% support among voters in those 18 early contests. And former Congressman Beto O'Rourke has 4% support. The other candidates come in with 1% or less. So how, Anthony, is all of this controversy affecting the Democrats?
Well, the charges that the president has leveled against Joe Biden, they are not hurting him directly. Most Democrats say they aren't true, they don't matter, haven't changed their views of him. But it's Biden's response to those charges that's generating kind of a lukewarm response from these early state Democrats. They say they're somewhat satisfied with that Biden response, but not very satisfied with it. And then we asked, well, when these candidates, if these candidates become the nominee, how well would they be able to fend off attacks from the president? Because surely they're going to be coming. And only half of people say that they think Biden will do that very well. You contrast that with Elizabeth Warren, whose numbers are much higher on her perceived ability to fend off attacks from the president. I also noticed that one of the strengths for Joe Biden has been what people perceive as his electability, the idea that he can beat Donald Trump among Democrats. That's down this week. And so I think it may be that, when you talk about electability, it's not just which demographic groups they think a candidate can appeal to, it's also how they rate the way they handle the campaign.
You said Elizabeth Warren has had a good month. So what's behind that?
Well, she's up across these early states. She's also then moved up in Iowa, extended her lead in New Hampshire. And a lot of that is she's doing particularly well with people who say they want a candidate who is tough. Her electability numbers have stayed about where they were. She's also doing much better than Joe Biden in being perceived as a candidate who will fight for people like you.
That's her slogan, isn't it?
That's one of her slogans. So that may be resonating. And I think a lot of this for her, too, is, not just on policy now, not just on being seen as specific, which she has been in previous polls, but she also seems to be undercutting some of Joe Biden's arguments as well as she gains steam.
The other frontrunner, Bernie Sanders, has had a tough month in terms of health problems. He had that heart attack. Is that impacting perception of him?
Well, we've been asking now and in previous polls if folks thought age was a concern for some of these older candidates. And the numbers who say that Sanders' age is a concern are up this week. We followed up and we asked what specifically is concerning, and it was those folks who said said, well, they were worried that he might not be able to do the job of president and all that it requires. So there may be some indirect impact on that for Sanders. Having said that, the support he does have, the folks who support him are among the strongest, are the strongest, in fact, in their support of any other candidate.
The passion factor.
Indeed.
All right, Anthony, thank you. All of the results from both of those surveys are now on our website at facethenation.com.